Welcome back. Week 2, day 2. Today we're going to continue our journey through the Bible by reading chapters from Genesis, chapters 14 through 16. After having just read about God's covenant promise with Abram, we see how Abram lives out this new life of following and having faith in a God whom he had maybe never known before. At the beginning of the story, we see how Abram goes out and rescues his nephew Lot. As a result of this effort, he is blessed by the mysterious Melchizedek, about whom we still have a lot of questions. Sometimes God doesn't give us all the details that we would want and the answers that we think we need to know. Instead, we're often called to put our faith and our trust in God, even if we don't see the whole big picture. And that is certainly the case with Abram. Once again, in chapter 16, God reiterates his covenant promise, in this case, focusing on the family that Abram is going to have. And yet Abram turns around and demonstrates an impatience that seems unlikely for this man whom we know as a great pillar of the faith. And yet even the great pillars of the faith are just as human and fallible as the rest of us. It's over time and experience that we develop the trust and faith in God that gets us through those moments of impatience. But this time, Abram's impatience results in the birth of a son, Ishmael. And unfortunately, that was not the means and the method by which God intended for Abram's family to grow. Even though they were common cultural practices in the ancient Near East, polygamy and the sexual use of concubines was not the divine way. It was not God's pattern for how God would accomplish the things that God had promised. And so we see that God doesn't affirm what Abram does, but rather provides for Hagar and for Ishmael out of God's great grace, while also reminding Abram that he needs to trust in God. It's easy for us to look at Abraham and look at these chapters as they go back to back, and even though they might cover large periods of time, and wonder, how is it that they fail to trust? How is it that they forget the promises of God? And yet I wonder today, what promises of God are we having struggles with remembering, with believing in, when the delay is greater than what we would hope for? It might be that we are struggling to believe that God will get us through situations such as the COVID epidemic. When will that vaccine come? When will we once more be able to worship in person, to be able to gather together in groups without masks and social distancing? We are called to believe in our God, and sometimes that requires a patience greater than what we want to experience. But know this: God is the author of the story, God is the hero of the story, and God will lead us through. When God makes promises, He is also faithful to keep those promises, and that is something we can hold on to, no matter how impatient we become with the delay as we experience it.